Hello, my dear students. Lost Spring Stories of Stolen Childhood, a chapter written by Anise Jung. Now, this chapter has two parts. First part, sometimes I find a rupee in the garbage, and second part, I want to drive a car. Both the part has the same theme, that is of child labor, and it runs with a common concept of the problems faced by those children who are not provided the facilities of education, or you can say they do not get an opportunity to get education due to various personal and social circumstances. Now, the first part, sometimes I find a rupee in the garbage. Why do you do this? I ask Sahib, whom I encounter every morning scrounging for gold in the garbage dumps of my neighborhood. Sahib left his home long ago, set amidst the green fields of Dhaka. His home is not even a distant memory. There were many storms that swept away their fields and homes, his mother tells him. That's why they left looking for gold in the big city where he lives now. I have nothing else to do, he mutters, looking away. Go to school, I say glibly, realizing immediately how hollow the advice must sound. There is no school in my neighborhood. When they build one, I'll go. If I start a school, will you come? I asked, half joking. Yes, he says, smiling broadly. Now, here you can see the author develops a conversation with him, and she comes to know that he has migrated from Dhaka years back. His family had come and settled down in Simapuri. Now, Simapuri is a place very close to Delhi, okay, on the periphery of Delhi, but with the concept of development, it is far away from it. Now, looking for gold in the big cities. Now, here gold does not refer actual gold, it refers to something which may be useful for them. Okay, then she asked him that why he does not go to school, and for that the boy gives the response that he is not having a school nearby. Just for the sake of asking, she asks that if she opens a school, will he come? He says yes. A few days later, I see him running up to me. Is your school ready? It takes longer to build a school, I say, embarrassed at having made a promise that was not meant. Now, the author never meant to open a school. She had just asked to know, okay, whether he actually wants to go to school or not. But you can see that the boy took it positively and he was deeply interested in going to school. This shows that they have not got the opportunity. If they have got the opportunity to go to school, they would have definitely gone. But promises like mine abound in every corner of his bleak world. Now, this is an important quote. But promises like mine abound in every corner of his bleak world. The author wants to say that she is not the only one to make a false promise to him. There are so many around him, like the politicians, bureaucrats, who have at various times made various false promises. After months of knowing him, I asked him his name. Sahib-e-Alam, he announces. He does not know what it means. If he knew its meaning, Lord of the Universe, he would have a hard time believing it. Unaware of what his name represents, he roams the streets with his friends, an army of barefoot boys who appear like the morning birds and disappear at noon. Over the months, I have come to recognize each of them. Now, here once again, the author Anise Jung has compared them to the morning birds. Why? Because just like the morning birds, all of them come outside early in the morning, roam about, find something which is useful for them, and then move back to their places. Why aren't you wearing chappals? I asked one. My mother did not bring them down from the shelf. Now, here bring them down from the shelf means did not purchase for them. He answers simply. Even if she did, he will throw them off, adds another who is wearing shoes that do not match. When I comment on it, he shuffles his feet and says nothing. I want shoes, says a third boy who had never owned a pair all his life. Traveling across the country, I have seen children walking barefoot in cities on village roads. It is not lack of money, but a tradition to stay barefoot is one explanation. I wonder if this is only an excuse to explain away a perpetual state of poverty. Now, here, my dear students, we should see that the most common thing was uncommon for them. Most of them were roaming about on the streets without any footwear, and when the author asked about it to them, they have different opinions. Now here there are three opinions. First one is, one of the boys says that he wants to wear shoes. Now that shows that even in extreme stage of poverty, they have their dreams, small dreams, okay, like wearing a shoe. Next, okay, few of them say that parents do not bring them down from the shelf, as it is written over here. Okay, parents do not buy and give it to them. Now the third, okay, when she spoke to the parents, they said that it is a tradition to stay barefoot. Okay, that it's not lack of money. Okay, it is a tradition that they have to stay barefoot. But according to the author, now here this is the most important opinion, she says that continuous perpetual state of poverty means continuous state of poverty has developed such a tradition. I remember a story a man from Udupi once told me. As a young boy, he would go to school past an old temple where his father was a priest. He would stop briefly at the temple and pray for a pair of shoes. 30 years later, I visited his town and the temple, which was now drowned in an air of desolation. In the background, where lived the new priest, there were red and white plastic chairs. A young boy dressed in a grey uniform, wearing socks and shoes, arrived panting and threw his school bag on a folding bed. Looking at the boy, I remembered the prayer another boy had made to the goddess when he had finally got a pair of shoes. Let me never lose them. The goddess had granted his prayer. Young boys like the son of the priest now wore shoes, but many other like the rag pickers in the neighborhood remained shoeless. Now, this paragraph is one of the most important paragraph of the chapter, because as I told you that basically the chapter speaks of a place called Simapuri, which is closer to Delhi, that is northern part of the India. But in this paragraph she speaks about Udupi, which is in Karnataka, and by giving an example, she is comparing that 20-30 years ago Udupi and Delhi both had the same situations, circumstances, but as in Delhi or in Simapuri, they did not allow education to be spread. Things did not change. Children like Sahib and hundreds of other children, they did not get any facility for education, and that is why even after 20-30 years there was no development. But after 20 years in Udupi, things had changed, because the son of the priest has been shown wearing shoes and he had a school bag also. So, education has the power, or literacy has the power to change the social circumstances. This is the message conveyed by her. My acquaintances with the barefoot rag pickers lead me to Simapuri, a place on the periphery of Delhi, yet miles away from it metaphorically. Now, this statement, Simapuri, a place on the periphery of Delhi, yet miles away from it metaphorically, it is an important quote. I have already told you, Simapuri is located nearer to Delhi, but with reference to development, it is metaphorically far away from it. There is no sign of development in Simapuri. Okay, means being born in Simapuri means to be born as a rag picker. Those who live here are squatters who came from Bangladesh back in 1971. Sahib's family is among them. Simapuri was then a wilderness. It still is, but it is no longer empty. Now, this is another quote. Simapuri was then a wilderness. It still is, but it is no longer empty. Means when these people came in 1970s or 71, okay, when they came, it was a wild place full of trees. At that time, wilderness means It was actually wild, full of trees, and nothing was there. It still is, means still hundreds of people live here now, but it still is a wilderness because there is no development taken place. Only people have started living there. Yeah, in structures of mud with roofs of tin and tarpaulin, devoid of sewage, drainage, or running water, lived 10,000 ragpickers. They had lived here for more than 30 years without an identity, without permits, but with ration cards that get their names on voter lists and enable them to buy grains. Food is more important for survival than an identity. If at the end of the day we can feed our families and go to bed without an aching stomach, we would rather live here than in the fields that gave us no grain. Say a group of women in tattered saris. When I asked them why they left their beautiful land of green fields and rivers. Okay. Now, the response author asked that why they left their places and why they came to this wilderness. They say that it may seem beautiful for others, but living there was a tragedy for them. It was a tragic life. It was a life full of sorrows, sadness, misery, because they did not even get proper food to eat. Now, here, if at the end of the day we can feed our families and go to bed without an aching stomach, we would rather live here than in the fields that give us no grain. Now, this is the basic concept that you should take care of. And tattered saris means their economical condition has been reflected here, that years have rolled by, but nothing has changed much in their life. Earlier they were not able to get the food, now they are getting that. Okay. Wherever they find food, they pitch their tents that become transit homes. Children grow up in them, become partners in survival, and survival in Simapuri means rag picking. Through the years, it has acquired the proportion of a fine art. Garbage to them is gold. Now, here this point, garbage to them is gold. Whatever other people throw away, considering as a waste, as a garbage, for them it is gold because it is a means of their survival. It is their daily bread, a roof over their head, even if it is a leaking roof. But for a child, it is even more. I sometimes find a rupee, even a 10 rupee note, Sahib says, his eyes lighting up. When you can find a silver coin in a heap of garbage, you don't stop scrounging, for there is hope of finding more. It seems that for children, garbage has a meaning different from what it means to their parents. For children, it is wrapped in wonders. For the elders, it is a means of survival. Now, this is once again a quote. For the children, it is wrapped in wonders. For the elders, it is a means of survival. Means when children search, they don't search only the things which they could sell and get money. Okay, a broken toy, a pair of shoes, even if it is a torn one or with a hole in it. Okay, they take that, they use it. But for parents, it is only a means of survival. One winter morning, I see Sahib standing by the fenced gate of the neighborhood club, watching two young men dressed in white playing tennis. I like this game, he hums, content to which it's standing behind the content to watch it standing behind the fence. I go inside when no one is around. He admits. The gatekeeper lets me use the swing. Sahib too is wearing tennis shoes. Okay, that looks strange over his discolored shirt and shorts. Someone gave them to me, he says, in the manner of an explanation. The fact that they are the discarded shoes of some rich boy who perhaps refused to wear them because of a hole in one of them does not bother him. See, a rich boy had thrown away a pair of shoes just because he had a hole. But for a child who dreams to wear a shoe, okay, even a shoe with a hole is a dream come true. Okay. For one who has walked barefoot, even shoes with a hole is a dream come true. But the game he is watching so intently is out of his reach. Now, this is the opinion of the narrator. Now, why this is important here? This is important here because it has two aspects. Okay, we can see there are two concepts described here. One is author is saying that for Sahib or children like Sahib, it is very difficult, okay, to play and learn this game because it is a costly game. On the other hand, there is a message also, indirect message that has been conveyed, okay, that there are so many, yes, who have raised themselves above their social and economical levels, and they are able to get whatever they want. Okay, money cannot become an obstacle. Clear, that also is an assessment point. Okay, there are so many examples. Okay, this morning Sahib is on his way to the milk booth. In his hand is a steel canister. I now work in a tea stall down the road, he says, pointing in the distance. I am paid 800 rupees and all my meals. Does he like the job? I asked. His face, I see, has lost the carefree look. The steel canister seemed heavier than the plastic bag he would carry so lightly over his shoulder. The bag was his. The canister belongs to the man who owns the tea shop. Sahib is no longer his own master. Now, this last part of the first half, sometimes I find a rupee in the garbage, is very important. Here, you can see that Sahib, as soon as he wanted to change his profession, he was able to do so. From rag picking, he switched over to working in a tea stall. Okay, still he is a child labor, still he is working, still he has to earn, but he is successful in changing the profession. Was he happy? He was not happy. Now, this is a very important statement. The steel canister seems heavier than the plastic bag. Now, here it is not the comparison of steel and plastic, it is a comparison of two professions. Plastic bag means he was his own master when he was picking up rags, but now when he works in the tea stall, when he has to go with the steel canister, he is no longer his own master. Now, the second part, I want to drive a car. Now, central character of this part is Mukesh. Okay, Mukesh insists on being his own master. I'll be a motor mechanic, he announces. Do you know anything about cars? I ask. Now, this second part is a description of a place known as Firozabad. Firozabad is famous for glass work, particularly making of bangles. Now, here there is a difference between the first part and the second part, and that actual difference is that in the second part, the job or the profession in which Mukesh is involved, there is more risk to life. It is more risky. And the second thing is, when he wants to change his profession, when he wants to become a motor mechanic, okay, there are a lot of problems faced by him. He is not able to change his profession. The people of his caste think that as he is born in the caste of a bangle maker, he is not supposed to do so. And the bureaucrats, sahukars and middlemen, or the other people, those who were involved in the profession, they also did not allow him to do so. So, that is the actual difference, the risk in the profession as well as the problems faced by them. Most of them had physical problems, like by the time they reached 30, they lost their eyesight completely. Let us see in the chapter. I learned to drive a car, he answers, looking straight into my eyes. His dream looms like a mirage amidst the dust of streets that fill his town Firozabad. His dream looms like a mirage, an illusion state of mind. Here, even the small dream of becoming a motor mechanic has been compared to a mirage. Why? Because it is, according to the author, according to Annie Zing, it is very difficult for them to achieve even that small goal. It is a mirage for them. There are so many obstacles, so many problems. Famous for its bangles, every other family in Firozabad is engaged in making bangles. It is the center of India's glass blowing industry, where families have spent generations working around furnaces, welding glasses, making bangles for all the women in the world, in the land, it seems. Mukesh's family is among them. None of them know that it is illegal for children like him to work in the glass furnaces with high temperature, in the dingy cells without air and light, that the law, if enforced, could get him and all those 20,000 children out of the hot furnaces where they slog their daylight hours, often losing the brightness of their eyes. Mukesh's eyes beam as he volunteers to take me home, which he proudly says is being rebuilt. Now, here, before I proceed with the reading, I would like to explain this concept that as I told you, the work in which Mukesh was involved was risky to life, and 20,000 children were working there in glass industry. Now, this don't you think it is incredible? Okay, we have so many laws against child labor and so on, and here the system itself is working hand in glove. Bureaucrats, sahukars, middlemen, authorities, people, they are in hand in glove. They know everything, but nobody is ready to take any action. Why? Because they are the ones to make profit out of it, and the social and economical condition of the workers remain the same. That is the most unfortunate thing. We walk down the stinking lanes choked with garbage, past homes that remain hovels with crumbling walls, wobbly doors, no windows, crowded with families of humans and animals coexisting in a primitive state. Now, the places where they lived, okay, the condition was very bad. Even the basic necessities and facilities were not there. Human beings and animals lived together. Okay. He stops at the door of one such house, bangs a wobbly iron door with his foot, and pushes it open. We entered a half-built shack. Half-built shack means the house was not even built properly. There was no proper door, nothing like that. Just by pushing it with the leg, you can open it. In one part of it, thatched with a dead grass, is a firewood stove over which sits a large vessel of sizzling spinach leaves. Now, in this, she is giving a description of the kitchen and the other things that was there inside that small so-called thatched roof house. On the ground, in large aluminium platters, are more chopped vegetables. A frail young woman is cooking the evening meal for the whole family. Through eyes filled with smoke, she smiles. She is the wife of Mukesh's elder brother. Not much older in years, she has begun to command respect as the Bahu. Now, Bahu is a Hindi term, daughter-in-law is the English of it, of the house. Already in charge of 3 men, her husband Mukesh and their father. Now, means Mukesh's elder brother's wife she was, and Mukesh's father also was taken care by her. She had to look after them, their food and other basic necessities. Okay, when the older man enters, she gently withdraws behind the broken wall and brings her veil closer to her face. As custom demands, daughter-in-laws must veil their faces before male elders. In this case, the elder is an improvised bangle maker. Despite long years of hard labor, first as a tailor, then as a bangle maker, he has failed to renovate a house, send his 2 sons to school. All he has managed to do is teaching them what he knows, the art of making bangles. Now, here you can see, okay, from years they are working, but they have gathered nothing. Okay, he even cannot send his children to school because there was no money left out. It is his karam, his destiny, says Mukesh's grandmother, who has watched her own husband go blind with the dust from polishing the glass of bangles. Now, see here, karam, they have taken it as their fate. As they are born in the caste of bangle makers, they could do nothing else. Okay, can a God given lineage ever be broken? She implies. Now, this is also a very sad thing. Okay, they are so much involved with the tradition, although they are not getting the food, but then also they are not ready to leave it. Why? Because it is considered as a God given lineage by them. Born in the caste of bangle makers, they have seen nothing but bangles in the house, in the yard, in every other house, every other yard, every street in Firozabad. Spirals of bangles, sunny gold, paddy green, royal blue, pink, purple, every color born out of the 7 colors of the rainbow, lie in mound of unkempt yards, are piled on 4-wheeled handcarts pushed by young men along the narrow lanes of the shanty town, and in dark hutments next to the lanes of flames of flickering oil lamps sit boys and girls with their fathers and mothers welding pieces of colored glass into circles of bangles. Their eyes are more adjusted to the dark than to the light outside. That is why they often end up losing their eyesight before they become adults. Now, here, okay, continuously, just because of working in the darkness, they, by the time they grow up, okay, most of them, they lose their eyesight. Now, can you feel the contrast that lies here? Okay, the things that they make is full of colors, bangles full of colors, and their life is full of darkness, it is colorless. So that is the irony that lies here. Okay, in the profession they are involved in. See, in both the parts you have seen the ironic situation. In the case of Sahib-e-Alam, it was his name, it stood ironic to his profession. Sahib-e-Alam means Lord of the Universe, yes, and the profession he was involved in was in rag picking. Here also the profession that in which they are involved is bangle making, full of colors, and their life is full of darkness, it is colorless. Savita, a young girl in a drab pink dress, sits alongside an elderly woman soldering pieces of glass as her hands move mechanically like the tongues of a machine. I wonder if she knows the sanctity of the bangles she helps make. It symbolizes an Indian woman's suhag. Okay, now Hindi terms have been used much by the author. The auspiciousness of marriage. It will dawn on her suddenly one day when her head is wrapped with a red veil, her hands dyed red with henna, and red bangles rolled onto her wrist. Now she says that it's not only for colors, but the bangles are a part of the tradition and culture of our society, and particularly in marriage. Okay, red bangles are worn by women. She will then become a bride like the old woman beside her who became one many years ago. She still has bangles on her wrist, but no light in her eyes. Now again this is ironic. Okay, in being involved in such a profession, yes, she has bangles on her wrist, but she has lost her eyesight, and then also they are compelled to work in that situation. एक वक्त शेर भर खाना भी नहीं खाया, she says in a voice drained of joy. She has not enjoyed even one full meal in her entire lifetime. Now this is a very sad statement. Okay, even after working so hard, even after risking their lives, yes, where they are having no facilities, clear, they cannot even get one full time meal. That's what she has reaped. Her husband, an old man with a flowing beard, says, I know nothing except bangles. All I have done is make a house for the family to live in. Now, at least Mukesh's family is having a house. Many of them, many others, those who are working, they were not having even that. Hearing him, one wonders if he has achieved what many have failed in their lifetime. He has a roof over his head. The cry of not having money to do anything except carry on the business of making bangles, not even enough to eat, rings in every home. The young men echo the lament of their elders. Now, this is an important statement. The young men echo the lament of their elders means nothing has changed from ages. The problems faced by their fathers or forefathers, the very same problem was faced by the younger generation now also, and that is why they were echoing the same troubles, they were having the same problems. Little has moved with time, it seems, in Firozabad. Years of mind-numbing toil have killed all initiatives and ability to dream. Years of mind-numbing toil from the past so many years. Now, this is again a quote. Years of mind-numbing toil have killed all initiatives and ability to dream means they have worked so hard that now they have lost all their dreams, or you can say all their dreams are burnt out. Okay, in the mind-numbing toil where they are not even able to think about their life or their future. Why not organize yourselves in cooperative? I ask a group of young men who have fallen into the vicious circles of middlemen who trapped their fathers and forefathers. Now, these middlemen are the one to make maximum profit out of all these things. Why? Because at a very less cost they used to purchase or take things from these men, these people, the workers, and they used to sell it at a high profit, and a share of that profit most probably was given to others also, and that is why the entire system worked as hand in glove. Okay, Even if we get organized, we are the ones who will be hauled up by the police, beaten and dragged to jail for doing something illegal. They say there is no leader among them, no one who could help them see things differently. Their fathers are as tired as they are. They talk endlessly in a spiral that moves from poverty to apathy and greed to injustice. Now, here again, this is a quote. Okay, they talk endlessly in a spiral. Now, their life also is like the bangles they make, spiral in shape. Okay, their poverty, apathy, and the greed that they face has no end. That also moves in a spiral. Anything that moves in spiral, okay, if you see, it has no beginning nor ending. Listening to them, I see two distant worlds. Now, in the board exam, this question comes: what are the two distant worlds? One of the family caught in the web of poverty, burdened by the stigma of caste in which they are born. The first problem was the caste in which they are born. They were not, most of them were not ready to leave their profession because they were born in the caste of bangle makers. The other, a vicious circle of sahukars, the middlemen, policemen, the keepers of the law, the bureaucrats and the politicians. Now, the other were these people who made profit out of them. They also did not want them to leave that profession. Together, they have imposed the baggage on the child that he cannot put down. Before he is aware, he accepts it as naturally as his father. To do anything else would mean to dare, and daring is not a part of his growing up. Okay, as I told you, daring here means to challenge the existing system, to try to leave that, and that was not allowed in that particular society. When I sense a flash of it in Mukesh, I am cheered. Okay, now the author says she is happy that at least the upcoming generations like Mukesh, they once again have gathered courage to raise their voice against the existing problems, and if the problems are not solved, they are even ready to change the profession. I want to be a motor mechanic, repeats. He uh, here the garage is a long way from his home. Again, it is ironic, or rather idiomatic, you can say. This means that it was not easy for him to go. Okay, there were many problems. Literally also the garage may be far away, that is one thing, but here there is a ironic concept also, that it was not quite very easy for him. I will walk. Now, this shows I will walk, this shows his determination. Okay, this shows that he is ready to overcome all the problems that he may face. He insists, do you also dream of flying a plane? He is suddenly silent. No, he says, staring at the ground. Now, when why she asked that, why author asked about the aeroplane? Okay, because she wants to know that could the dreams raise up to other levels. He simply says no, because here you can see they can dream of the things only which they have seen around them. He has seen cars. The most glorified thing most probably which he had noticed ever is a car, and working for it means a glorified profession for him. As he has never seen an aeroplane, he is not interested in it. Okay. In the small murmur, there is an embarrassment that has not yet turned into regret. He is embarrassed, but he still has hope. His embarrassment has not turned into regret. He is contented to dream of cars that he sees hurling down the streets of his own town. Few aeroplanes fly over Firozabad. Clear, as I have told you that he has not seen aeroplanes fly up, and that is why he could not dream to that level. So, we come to the end of this chapter. Now, as I have told you, there are two parts, both deal with child labor, the problems of hundreds and thousands of children who have lost their spring of life. Lost spring means the best part of their life. They have to work in order to survive. Sometimes other family members are dependent on them. Even if they want to change their profession, they are not allowed to do so. It is a very critical situation. Okay, a country where child labor is a crime. Okay, if such situation continues, things will become worst for them, and most probably we cannot ever be able to count ourselves in a developed nation. Okay, thank you.